All right, good to see everybody again. Big win for us on Saturday night, and I think
Recording in progress.
Looking at it yesterday, I think it played out much like we thought. A lot of big plays in that game. A couple in particular, the interception following the fake punt, and then the big kickoff return following their touchdown to cut it to 3. We were able to gain the momentum back, and that was something that was lacked certainly in game 3 for us. So the last 2 weeks to be able to do that, come up with big plays in each of the 3 phases. That's what a good team needs to do, and I think we're a team that is getting better. We got a ways to go yet, but feel good about the progress here. 5 games in, another opportunity to play at home this week against Idaho State, homecoming. Another opportunity to test ourselves. Each week's its own game, its own opponent, its own set of circumstances. But we have to go into each week and prepare to become our very best, and that's what our guys started doing this morning. So, with that, I'll open it up for questions.
I mean, what can you say? I think you won 15 straight. Montana State's won 15 straight at home. I guess what can you say about kind of the home field advantage you guys have built at Bobcat Stadium?
Well, I think there's a couple things there. I know the crowds that we get, the environment that our opponents have to play in is a part of it for sure. It is a hostile environment for an opponent, so I do think that helps us on each one of these game days. I would imagine to some degree our altitude does help us, especially when we can take a lead into the fourth quarter and be able to run it out. I think that's when that makes a difference, and in particular when we're going fast on offense and we can get them tired down. And I think it's a mark of a good team that you're able to defend your home turf. So through my stretch here and the stretch that got that streak going, I think we've had good players and we've had a good team. So we certainly want to keep that going.
And Sean was named, I think, Co-Big Sky Offensive Player of the Week, and I think even National Player of the Week as well. I mean, what do you think of that?
Well, excited for him. I think you put up numbers like he did. You warrant those kind of awards, and he'd be the first one to say it was much bigger than his effort. I know, a good chunk of his rushing yards, he was untouched. We had a couple really good perimeter blocks, good scheme drawn up by the offensive staff. But he played well. He had a good command. He threw the ball well, and his first really true test of throwing the football, and we'll need more of that moving forward.
Coach, what can you say about your team's ability to respond? I know that you talked about the first, there are a couple plays, James' pick and then Cleveland's touchdown when they were in close game situations. And then the previous game, Tommy getting hurt, Sean coming in. What can you say about your team's fight?
Well, I do think we're a close team. I think that's formed over many months, many years. I think our guys generally know they can count on one another, whether that's offense, defense. We've certainly added new players this year, and those players have fit in real well to be able to be counted on. I think our coaches, definitely have make adjustments in games that have allowed us to maybe correct some things as we've gone through games. But it's being able to respond in a moment, right? You get an opportunity to make a play, and do you make it? And then for the most part, these last couple of weeks, when those opportunities have come up, we've been able to make it. So that needs to continue. I look back at the Oregon State game. It was the contrary. We couldn't necessarily gain the momentum back. So I think we maybe learned something that night. About when that opportunity's in front of us, go take it instead of expecting it just to happen.
Speaking of Tommy, is there an update on him?
Yeah, he's as of right now, today, Monday, he's not cleared. So we'll continue to monitor his progress. I think it's head injuries are obviously very serious, and each one of them in their recovery is their own recovery. And we've had a couple of concussions prior to this, and those guys have played in the following week. That doesn't mean Tommy will. So, as we stand here right now, he hasn't been cleared yet. So.
Does the Tua situation, does that make this? I don't know.
I don't know the phrase, but exactly.
Yeah, I think I hope it for anybody involved with football. It just it opens our eyes that you better treat these things the way they need to be treated. And I don't know all the ins and outs of how that was treated or mistreated or whatever last Sunday. But I know this. We have very strict protocol. We're going to adhere to that. We want our guys to be absolutely honest with where they're at and go from there. It's not not a decision that I come close to making. I listen to our medical staff and we go from there.
To no discredit to Idaho State, but on a game like this with them 0-5, does it go into account of maybe there's no need to play him this week, or if he's ready to play, he'll play?
Yeah. Once he's ready to play, he'll play. So yeah, that doesn't have any bearing. I mean, we're in a Big Sky game, and I think we're facing a team that keeps getting better. So yeah, that has no bearing.
And then speaking of Idaho State, they kind of gave the Grizz some trouble on Saturday. What did you see from that game film, and what are you guys kind of expecting this week?
Well, they're an improving team, and a team that's really hungry. Last year was last year for them to make a coaching change. There's new energy, there's new hunger. And that hunger hasn't necessarily been satisfied with a victory to this point, but you can see them getting better. And seeing Coach Ragle's post-game comments, you can see the pain in their dissatisfaction, not coming up empty on Saturday. So they're still they're finding their way, but there's a tremendous amount of fight in them. I think that's the thing that I look at. I mean, they were on the verge of going down 35-6. They forced a fumble at the goal line, and before you know it, it's a one-score game. So that's credit to their players and their coaching staff to recognize they're getting better, recognize that each week is a new opportunity, and we got to see it for what it's worth. It's a Big Sky game that matters every bit as much as the ones we played the last couple weeks.
Does last year's game being pretty close, does that help kind of the focus a little bit?
Well, I think last year in general, as you look at our Big Sky play, I mean, I think there was several games that were back and forth affairs. It didn't matter what records were, and Idaho State was one of those, and they played us really tough last year, and so I think our guys recognize that, and you have to have a maturity about you to understand. There's certainly no weeks off. I mean, and there shouldn't be in football. I mean, you get 11 of these opportunities guaranteed to you, and you have a week to prepare for each one of them, and you better take them all very, very seriously as far as what your opponent's capable of. And like I said before, we're getting better, but we're far from where I think we feel like we can be. So, let's make it about that as much as anything. Just what can we do to keep getting better? Recognize that Idaho State's as dangerous as anybody.
Are there any ISU players that kind of have stood out on film?
Well, I know you look at the receiving core. I think that's the thing that jumps out at you right away. Gilroy in particular he's very dynamic, and he's not the only one. But I think he's right up there in receptions in the conference, and got downfield ability, can make all kinds of catches. I know they're playing now their third quarterback, but he stepped in there and did a good job this past week. I know defensively, their middle linebacker, he's up in the tackles in the conference, and they kind of use him in a lot of different ways. They throw a bunch of different fronts at you. So no, I think they're doing some good things, and it did definitely. I think the guys that jump out at you though are that group of receivers first and foremost.
And I think Lane was back at practice. I think he was dressed this last Saturday. Do you expect him to get some playing time?
Yeah, Lane was ready to go last week. That was emergency maybe in the way we would have utilized him. I know we ended up going with Garrett at the end. It was great to see Garrett finish the game out. But I think Lane now was in a different mode. We gave him essentially an extra week because there's still. He hasn't been hit, he hasn't been tackled, he hasn't had to land. But I think I think we're over the hump, and as far as what that'll mean, reps wise, really appreciated what Elijah's been able to do the last few weeks. So But Lane will be, I guess, more in the mix than he was last week.
And are there any other injury updates, I guess you had?
No, we came out of that game with a few bumps and bruises. It was a physical game, but as far as anybody being out at this point, there's no one that I would declare out at this point.
What have you seen from JT Reed's development? How would you describe him as a player?
Well, I think he, having him here in the spring, obviously, was an opportunity for him to transition. Both physically, I think that's the biggest thing, because he's still a relatively young player. But then get our offense down, so to speak, and then. I think what we've seen on film, he's very athletic. He's a strong player at the point of attack, and he's, I think he loves the game of football. So he plays offensive line, plays that guard position for us with a lot of passion, and has a lot of athletic ability to go along with that passion. So, like our line in general, I think that's how I would describe a lot of them. I think they really enjoy playing the game of football, and we got an athletic bunch that's capable of doing a lot of different things. I think we've leaned probably more on their athleticism than anything else, but I think they're getting more and more physical as a group, and JT's a big part of that.
How specifically, I guess, have you leaned on that athleticism?
Well, we've gone to more of an outside zone running scheme, and that's one based more on the guy's ability to move than it is just probably brute force when you just compare outside and inside zone. We were more heavy inside zone last year. I think it was twofold. I think we saw this group of younger athletic offensive linemen coming up, but I think we felt like it would serve us better to get the ball potentially off tackle, or in a lot of these plays cut back too, but I think it would serve our running backs better too. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I think we've pass blocked fairly well, and that's generally a sign of athleticism more than it is like brute force. Like we're at 5 games in, and I think it's a group that can continue to get better and better.
And then this week is Ragle returns, right?
Yep.
How much do you think he'll play this week? Is he? I'm sure
Yeah.
he's hungry to get
No,
out.
I know we left spring with Rylan as a starter, knowing the outcome of the first 5 games, and really he went through fall camp as if when he came back he would be in position to start, and I think it'll be something we'll look at playing him a lot. We've missed him, honestly. I know between Reddy Short and Kendrick Bailey, I think they've played okay, and they both played, and I think Rylan, though, if he could have played game 1 when it started game 1, so we're here game 6 is the first game he can play, so he'll start and he'll play a lot.
Danny has been kind of another big guy in the middle there. I guess what have you seen from him as the leading tackler in 5 games?
Yeah, that position probably should be right at the top, I guess, first off. But Danny's got really good instincts, and he has been a good tackler when he's been given those opportunities. What you look at are guys where they're supposed to be. How quickly do they get there, and then when they get there, do they make tackles? And I think by and large he's done all those things. He hasn't been perfect necessarily, but been really pleased with his play, and I think our linebacking core of those 3 guys as a whole. I think Callahan had a really good game on Saturday night, and he's been steady. He doesn't maybe flash the same way Danny does at times, but he's been really steady. And then when Nolan's been in there to be able to give both those guys some breaks, he's played well too. So I think that those 3 guys have played like we'd hoped. I do think there's room for continued improvement too, especially when you look at Danny being as young as he is.
I just wanted to ask you just about what you think of what Charlie Ragle has in front of him there at Idaho State, just the rebuild that he has there. And like you said, they're playing with a lot of passion.
Yeah, well, that's the first thing. When we went to Wyoming, you felt like it was a complete rebuild, and you're in a position where you don't start from scratch with brand new players. You are starting from scratch in some regard because you're new to the program like he is. But those players who have lived out the last several years, whatever it might be, are there, and that's challenging, you know. So I think what's apparent with Coach Ragle, he is a passionate coach first and foremost. So I think he's gained that respect with how I'm sure he's gone about his business for his players, that he's there for his players, because you have to earn their trust and respect for them to ultimately want to turn the corner. A corner doesn't get turned simply because you make a coaching change. I think a coaching staff has to come in and earn that, and I think it's apparent that he's done that. You know, and in this day and age with roster movement and all that can be done, I think I suppose it can happen sooner than later, and that's probably what is expected in this day and age. So I think he's off to, you know, a good start, even though the record wouldn't indicate it, just by watching how they continue to get better, improve, obviously, and then just the fight that they showed in particular on Saturday.
You mentioned there Villeroy too, the receiver. He looked really good on Saturday. I know they think he is one of the best receivers in the league. What do you think makes him so good, though?
Well, I think he's got good physical skill for one, and then I do think his ability to adjust to the football, to make the difficult catch, to be able to transition out of a catch. I mean, those are all qualities that aren't measurable necessarily. You know, it's not height, weight, speed. It's he seems like he's got a knack for being able to do the things that the really good receivers do. So, you know, he's getting a lot of opportunities, and he's making the most of them. So, you know, he's going to be a guy that this league's obviously going to have to contend with.
What do you think of Idaho State's performance last week against Montana? It looked like they played with a certain level of desperation, but it looked like that desperation helped them quite a bit in being competitive, which is good.
Yeah, you know, they got some early momentum with the interception, turned that into points, and I think that with a team like they are right now, they're winless, and whether they're young or old, I think they're a little bit of a mixture. So it's not that they're just this young team, but obviously they're young under Coach Ragle. So, you know, you give them an opportunity to gain some momentum, especially at home like they were last week. That's a dangerous situation. You know, a team like that can really feed off that scenario, and they did. And you know, the play where Johnson's going in to score, and that's going to make that a 35-6 game. I mean, that obviously stoked the fire for the way they finished, you know, and they finished with a couple more scores to cut it to a one-score game essentially. So, you know, those particular plays, and I've talked about momentum a lot, and they got it right away, and they were able to kind of maintain it, make some plays here and there, and then obviously they got it back at the tail end and made that game really interesting.
The young quarterback, he looks like he's got some presence to him. I mean, he's tough. So, in your estimation, though, when you see young quarterbacks, what sort of jump can they make in their second, third starts of their career?
Oh, I think they can be significant. You know, you still don't know what you don't know a little bit, and so if you have a positive experience, and a positive experience can mean a lot of different things. I mean, you can really build off it, and you know, he came in, and probably I just, you know, listened to him in the post-game press conference. He was going out there with nothing to lose, and you know, you're the third string quarterback, you maybe don't see this opportunity coming, and there it is in front of you. You go out there and play, and that's kind of, you know, that's what he talked about after the game, and that's kind of how he went out there, you know. And you got a guy that's you know, he's not necessarily fighting for playing time. It's there in his lap right now. He's going to go out there and you know, throw caution to the wind, so to speak, I guess. So that's what I kind of saw of him. And he can certainly make all the throws, and he's a little bit different than Hayes certainly, and Tyler, who started at the beginning of the season, Vanderwall. So you know, that changes them a little bit, and I thought they adjusted well to his skill set, and I'm sure you know, whatever his availability is, I think that'll be a little bit of a question. It sounds like we'll try to figure that out the best we can, because they are different guys, and we'll have to be prepared for either of them. I would think going into this game.
I know we've talked about Sebastian Valdez quite a bit, but it seems like he's turned a corner just in the fact that now he's sort of realizing, like, I can be an actual elite player in the next
Well, I think he's playing with more and more confidence. He's playing more and more consistent for sure. Because we need him to flash obviously and make some big plays, but over the long haul, in the course of any one of these games, he's got to do the little things too. I think there was so many plays. Like last year, looking at Chase. Chase was playing nose, but you're both inside. I mean, a lot of the plays where you're not getting in the stat sheet, but you're forcing the action and you're dictating things. I think that's what we're seeing every bit as much as the sacks and the tackles for losses. He's becoming a real problem, play in, play out, and that's trusting his ability, and it's also trusting the scheme and the coaching and all those things. So, he's a guy I think that is just realizing his potential, and he's super humble. He works his tail off, and we're going to continue to need to see him climb for us to really get where we want to get.
From an offensive perspective, how much of an impact can it have when a guy can be so disruptive on the interior of the defensive line?
Well, that's where it starts. That's where it starts with our defense. And if you know that a 3 technique, so a defensive tackle on our defense who plays in that B gap over the guard, is going to wreak havoc, and you have to account for him in different ways. And I think where that probably starts right now is a little bit more on the pass side, where he draws different attention than an interior guy would from a rush point of view. But then also, when you're thinking, okay, can we run at this guy, or do we need to run away from him? I think all those things make it really hard offensively the better you think a interior guy is. I mean, and I think he's getting to that point. I think he's getting to a point where when you look at our defense, you better figure out where 95 is, and then what are you going to do to account for him, as opposed to just seeing him as one of the 11 out there.
I also want to ask about Willie Patterson. We're doing a little something on him for just a senior feature, and he has been so confident since he first got on the game. I know that was before he got there. But how do you sort of harness that? Because sometimes maybe receivers can feel themselves a little bit, but you want them to be really confident too. So what sort of balancing act is that?
Well, I think now in my second year with him, and really his second year of really being a regular, I know he really hadn't been, whether it was due to injury or whatever factors before. I think there's a different level of maturity to him. I do think his confidence in playing on edge and walking that line, as he's not blessed with great size by any means, but he knows who he is. I think he does have really good speed, quickness, ability to get up and get the ball. I think he's got to play with confidence and swagger, but pushing it up to that line, I guess, is part of what allows for him to have success. And I just think there's a different maturity about him this year, even compared to last year. I think he knows that he's in more of a leadership role this year. So the example he sets is important. He's definitely one of the guys that leads the charge as far as representing our team when it comes to talking and those type of things. But I think he's doing a good job of going right up to that edge, I guess.
There's a sequence in the game on Saturday where it's so quintessential Willie Patterson. He almost made a huge play, but didn't quite get it. But then he goes and makes a spectacular catch and then catches a touchdown right after that too. So it seems like he has an ability to sort of start fresh and stay in it.
Yeah, I thought that sequence, I know exactly what you're talking about, was a perfect picture of his maturity, because I think the Willie Patterson of a few years back, with that drop, he might have gone in the tank, and I say a few years back, I from what I've gathered, when he was much younger. And you know what? I think he owned the drop, and I think it was probably 2 or 3 plays later, he had the chance to make just an incredible catch. It was a good throw by Sean, but an incredible catch. And the next play he scores a touchdown. And being a competitor, knowing that we have confidence in him, so he makes a drop. You know what? Next play, I think that next play mentality that he displayed in that sequence is big for our team. We need guys to think that way, because we're not going to make every play. And when we don't make a play, we got to make the next one. And Willie exemplified that mindset in that sequence that you're talking about.
Just last one for me, what do you like about him in his transition? Because I know he was playing way more on the inside, now he's playing a little bit more on the outside. What you like about just moving him outside? What made you make that choice for him?
Well, I think we felt like he was pigeonholed a little bit last year, and that was based on our personnel with, especially down the stretch with Lance and Nate being more outside players. But we felt like he had outside ability with his speed, his ability to run beyond people, but then also his ability to get up and go get balls too. And as much as we want to throw it up in those situations, we felt like he'd be, an excellent candidate, I guess, for that, and he's proved us right so far this year. Still having the flexibility to play inside, but I think the more we can have guys that can play inside or out, the better off we're going to be. I think Cleveland is the same way. He showed that in running by their defender on his touchdown too. And the more we can get those guys outside, and really the more we can play guys and get Taco and Marquis in the slot, I think the better off we're going to be. I know we really played those three guys exclusively at Eastern Washington, and they just played too much. So I know their versatility. So I know that didn't, I went beyond your question there, but I think we saw Willie could play outside. I think that's important for our very best guys to be able to play inside and out.